Today I'm going to show you how to make one of these little name keyrings for your Graze locker key using Illustrator. So let's dive into it. Illustrator is a powerful vector-based layout tool. Illustrator is also a powerful tool to realize your ideas in the real world through digital fabrication. Whether through laser cutting, CNC machining, vinyl cutting or more, laser cutting allows us to produce highly detailed, accurate, cut or engraved pieces. No doubt over your time at Graze, you'll explore laser cutting within your own discipline, but it's really important that we all have a baseline knowledge of how to design for laser cutting to be able to use this piece of kit. When you open up Illustrator, you should be presented with a window that looks like this. To start a new file, we'll just come over here, we'll hit New File, and then there's a couple of presets here depending on what you're doing. So if you're going for print and it's just going to be A4, you can just select that preset here. However, what we're going to do is we're going to go custom here. So I want to change my width here to 90 millimeters. You want to make sure that you're working here in millimeters, not pixels. Pixels is great for screen-based tasks, less good for real-world applications. For real-world applications, for digital fabrication, we always want to use millimeters because that's what machines understand. So we're going to go 90 millimeters and we're going to go by 22 millimeters. I'm going to make sure I've only got one artboard here. And the main reason here is once I select this and hit create, this is my artboard size. So we now know if we set it up to 90 by 22, we cannot send a file through to the laser cutter that's bigger than this. So you need to make sure that you ensure that whatever artwork you're creating fits on this artboard in front of you. So you'll have all had an introduction to Illustrator, so hopefully you're familiar with some of the tools now. But if not, this white space here represents our artboard. On the left-hand side here, you've got some of the most common tools that you would use within Illustrator. Really handy little top tip here is down in the bottom right corner of each of these tools, or some of these tools, there's a little triangle, which suggests if I left click and hold, there's more tools here available. We're going to use that in a second. Over here on the right-hand side, all Adobe software is layer-based. So it's really important that we're leveraging the layers here. This is going to help us in this project. I'm going to show you why. So we've got layer 1 here, and if we hit the little plus button here, we'll get a layer 2. We're just going to double click on these and we're going to rename them. So I'm going to call this outside box. I'm going to call layer 2 text. And then the final one, I'm going to call this constraint. Okay, so first, what I want to do to make my little keyring is I need the little bounding box that's going to go around the outside that's going to hold my text. And you might have noticed on my one, it's got some nice rounded corners on it. So in this tool, you've got a rectangle over here by default. If I left click and hold my mouse button, I'm going to get the rounded rectangle tool. So I'm just going to select that, and you can draw and you can select it that way and create shapes. We know-ish the size we want to work to. So I'm just going to left click, and if I left click, I'll get a little box that appears here that allows me to type in the size that I want. So I'm going to go 60 millimeters, and then I know my height's going to be 22 millimeters. And you can play around with this, but for me, I found that a corner radius, so how rounded over that corner is, I find that it works quite nicely at 5 millimeters. So this now appears. Anytime you use any of these tools, it's always good practice to go back up here to the top tool here on the left. This is your selection tool. So this now allows me to select this, pick it up and move it wherever I want. And you'll notice there's these little pink lines that appear. That's my smart guide. So all I want to do here is I want to snap it right here and it will say center. So I know that's in the center. But I also noticed when it was off screen here, you'll notice it's got a nice black outline here, but it's also got a white fill. For laser cutting, we want to make sure, because we're cutting here, that we don't use a fill. So up here, you can see I've got a white fill here. So this is my fill color. And over here, this is my outline color. So I'm just going to change this. Move this over. I'm just going to change this to this, which is see-through. So you can see now in my window that this is now see-through. I'll just drag that back into the center. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to be able to control the size of the width of that line. And so what I want to do is in your Illustrator settings, you're going to go to units and you're going to get a little window that pops up like this. And by default, we've already set up our working space to be in millimeters. But for this task, you might find that your stroke is still set to pixels. You're just going to change that to millimeters. And as soon as we do that, what we can do is I can select this And then up here, this is the width of my line. So if I change that to say 2.5, you'll see that that line then thickens up. Perfect, that's exactly what I want. So we're just going to change all of our lines to 3mm. We've done some testing, and 3mm ensures that your ultimate keyring will stand the test of time and hopefully last for the entire time you're here at Grays at least. So I've got my bounding box, brilliant. Next thing I need is my text. So I'm just going to, in my Layers tab, select text. And then what I can do here is in this little space here, if I left click, that now locks this outside box layer. And what that does is it's locking everything on that layer. So that means I can't now pick up and randomly move that box, which is great. It's in the place I want. I don't want it to move. So next up, I'm going to take my text tool over here, and I'm just going to draw a bit of a text box here. Doesn't matter how big it is, we can change that. Just type your name in. I appreciate that I've got quite a short name here. If you find that you're not able to get your name to fit in here, it might be worth going with a second name or possibly even a nickname. So in here, I'm just going to change my font here to a really simple one. I'm going to go Helvetica. I'm going to go bold so that it will cut nicely. Quite happy for you to choose any font of your choosing. Once I get this set up, I'll run over some really important things though, which you should be considering if you are going to change your font. So next thing here, I've got my font, I've got Ben, obviously that's too small. I want to increase the font size here so that the top of the letters go through the top of this line and the bottom go through this line, so that ultimately when I cut the whole thing out, it's all connected and I don't have any floating pieces that will then just fall away. So I'm going to select all of my text and I'm just going to change the font size. So you'll notice anytime I change the tool that I'm using, the top bar here will change to represent the extra tools that I might need. So at the moment I'm using the text tool, and I can change the font, I can change the weight, and I can also change the font size. So in here, I'm just going to change that. Let's try 60. That looks pretty close. Go back to my select tool so that I can then move this about a bit more. Right, so I'm going to have to go bigger. Let's try 70. I feel like I'm going to have to go bigger again. 75, will that be enough? Let's see. Oof, right on the border. I'm not going to push my luck here, so I'm actually going to go up to, let's try 78, and that should be fine. Okay, that looks great. So the only problem I've got here is I want to make sure that I've got enough space right here so that I can get the keyring hardware through this hole so that it attaches to a keyring. So we're going to come up to our constraint layer, and I'm just going to lock off the text layer for a second. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to place a little box in here that's the right size, and I'm going to lay that over the top. We're not going to laser cut that, but it's going to help me move my text so that I have the right size space here. So I'm just going to left click and hold on rectangle, and then let's just go for a box size of about 5 by 5. That should be plenty big enough. Change that to pink so I can actually see it and differentiate it. Pop that in there. Perfect. Okay, so doesn't have to be too precise, so I'm going to lock that layer off, unlock my text layer, reselect that so I can now pick my text up again. And then what I can do is I can butt that up, use my arrow keys just to move that around a little bit. Okay, that looks good. Quite happy with the text. Clearly my outside box needs to be bigger, so we'll just unlock this layer and then I can select that. And there's a few ways that you can do this. Once you've got it selected, you've got these little areas here. So if I hold my mouse over this little square, I can actually just drag this out to be any size I want. So I probably want it to be that big. Equally, you can be more precise if you want to be more precise. So I could just change it in here. So I could go 65, and then I could use my arrow keys, just loosely move that into place. That looks pretty good to me. Okay, so I'm happy with the text. I'm also happy with the boundary box. Now I want to make it laser ready. So at this point, I'm going to take my constraint layer and I'm just going to delete that. So if I hit the little delete button, the dustbin, I'll get a reminder. Yes, do you want to delete that? I do want to delete that. So I'm going to unlock my text layer. And now I'm going to show you what the laser sees. So for all intents and purposes, we're looking at this and we can imagine if it cuts out the black area, well, that'll make a great keyring. The problem is that lasers don't see your artwork in the same way as Illustrator does. So on your keyboard, if you hit Command and Y, or if you're on Windows, Control and Y, that's going to show you essentially what the laser sees here. So you can see that if I hit Command Y again, I can see that I've got a little bounding box here. So even though that line is quite thick, it's only being read as a wafer thin cut line here. Okay, so that's the first thing I need to change. So I'm going to select that. And then I can come up to Object at the very top menu. And then you can go down to Path and then Outline Stroke. And you'll notice the second I do that, it changes. So if I hit Command Y again, you can now see I don't have that little line running through the middle. I've got the line on each side. Brilliant. That's exactly what I was looking for. And the next problem I've got here is that this text is actually being read as just the bounding box for the text. So what I want to do here is I want to outline my text, which means I can't edit it anymore. So right now I could double click on it and I could change any element of that. What I actually want to do now is I want to lock it in. I want to turn it into vector artwork. So at the very top menu, you're going to go up to Type, and then you're going to go to Create Outlines. And now if I hit Command Y, perfect. That looks really good. Quite happy with that. And actually, I can see here that I could probably move that down a little bit to make it a little bit more evenly spaced. Perfect. So my only problem here is if I zoom in here, you can see I've got my line through here and I've also got my text through here. So if the laser cuts all this, it's going to cut my letters separately from this. So what I actually want to do is I want to connect everything. So I'm going to hit Command Y. And to make life a bit easier, I'm just going to pick up my text and I'm going to change the color. Change it to this orange color. Right? So now I can more clearly see that the overlap's happening. So if I want to combine shapes together, or if I want to subtract one shape from another shape, in Illustrator, all you need to do is open Pathfinder. So to do that, just go up to the window menu up at the very top, come down to Pathfinder, and you'll get this little box that will appear. And then all we're going to do is going to really simply select that and select the bounding box. And then if we hit this little button here, this is our Unite button. And you'll notice it changes color. And now if I come in here again and I hit Command Y, that text doesn't go through the outline anymore. It's all connected. And I can see, because this is all one color, that orange space represents ultimately what I would be left with my laser cut piece. So the final thing here is I said that everything needs to fit within the bounding box. So mine doesn't currently. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag it out of the way, drag it back in, and you'll notice it snaps to the bottom. That's great. And then what I can do is, in the same way as I change the size of the box, I can just pick up this corner here and I can change the scale. But you'll notice here it's not keeping the aspect ratio. So to keep the aspect ratio, I just want to hold Shift on the keyboard, and then I can drag that back down. And that looks great. Right, so our file here is nearly ready for laser cutting. The final thing that we need to do is for a laser cutter to understand what it needs to do. It understands outlines only. So we've been working with a fill because it helps us to understand what we're looking at. I'm going to change that to see-through, and I'm just going to change this fill, the outline color here, to red. And by setting that to red, we're telling the laser cutter to cut. So the laser cutter understands a couple of different colors. So anything that's red will be set to cut, and it will cut all the way through. Anything that's set to green will engrave. So it will make a mark on the material, but it won't cut all the way through. We want to cut all the way through, so we're going to set that to red. Then you can save it. So you'll get this little dialog box that pops open. I'll just place this on the desktop for now. And it's really important that when we save our work here, we save it as our full name. So I'm going to go Ben Durack Keyring. By saving it out as your full name, it means that we're going to end up with the correct files, and we'll also be able to identify those that perhaps aren't working and get in touch. Leave the file format as Illustrator, save it out, and upload it to the Dropbox. Good luck, and if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out.